Everybody is doing the best that they can where they are because who they are hasn't evolved to where they want to be.
I always look back and see where I should have did things differently. Did I give it my all? In a lot of cases, yeah. But I don't think I reached the potential.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Today for Tomorrow podcast. Look, we are going virtual again, but we've got an amazing topic today. Today, we're going to talk about the 5 reasons most men never reach their full potential. This is definitely a subject that I feel like is going to resonate with a lot of men, and it might touch a couple fellas because you might realize that there's a few areas that you might want to step up in, because the thing is, we're essentially talking about complacency. That's the reality of it. But I think what people kind of misunderstand is that complacency we're not just particularly talking about you might be complacent in your finances, or you might be complacent when it comes to working out. But complacency can show up in these little areas, all these different areas of your life that cause the full picture to not be what you might have thought it was going to be. It might not be what you intended it to be, and it might end up just bad. So, fellas, opening up the floor, my first question is, life right now for you and people at home, think about this. Is it what you thought it would be at this stage of your life?
Wow. Man, I would say no. If I go back to Rodney when I was a teenager, no, because I really didn't even think about life this far down the road, to be honest with you. I didn't even have a picture of what this life, all I had was what I saw my uncles, my dad, how they looked and what they were doing. And I thought, well, hey, I'll probably be doing the same thing. And if you take Rodney in his 30s, I'll still say no, because at this point I felt like, hey, I would be retired and be a professor at some college somewhere. So in each step, I got to say God had a different plan, because every time I would think about, hey, what the next 10 years might look or 20 years might look, it didn't look that way. But I'm just saying, I'm happy with the way it turned out, the way it's turning out. But no, it's not what I thought.
Got you. Mike?
You know what? That's a great question. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately. And I think a part of the reason why I personally have been thinking about it is because this past year has been just very exciting for me. It's been things that, my life has literally took a whole different direction. It started from me getting a call one day, and, the job, the corporate life that I've been in for 13 plus years, pretty much that was going out the window. From that morning to that afternoon, my life and my family's life looked different. And for me, thank God, I was on another path with the entrepreneurial life for the real estate. So I took it as a platform. You know what? This is that moment that God has been prepping me for. Kick out the nest. It's time to go fly. With that came some unknowns, but to me, everything goes back to true faith. And that's really, walking by faith and not by sight, is just trusting God, and everything that happens, either God willed it or God allowed it to happen for a reason. And we may not be able to understand in that moment. So when I look back at my life, I can't say like this specific moment was extremely clear to me, but I do feel I'm on that path that I used to dream about when I was a young man. And I didn't understand how it was going to look. I didn't know how it was going to come together. And just now, I'm almost 40. I got a couple years, so I'm not going to date myself too quickly, but it's just now like clearly being revealed. And I feel like that's important, because I see with a lot of younger people, you know, they'll be in their 20s and be supremely frustrated because, you know, life isn't, I'm not where I'm supposed to be. I'm not. And I think, you know, the social media plays a big part in that. But just to answer your question, I can honestly say in this moment now, I feel like I'm on my life path of where I thought I was going to be. Now, had you asked me that a year ago or a year and a half ago, you probably would have got a little bit different answer.
Got you. You know, because I think it's an interesting question, because some people, you could take it as, oh, well, actually, you know, life is not where I thought it was going to be, and because of A, B, C, and D. But one thing, too, the other side of it, I feel like, is sometimes we have like unrealistic expectations for what life is supposed to be. So kind of touching on what you were saying, like for me, if we went back 10 years ago, no, I have no issue saying how old I am. 10 years ago, I'd be 15 years old, okay? And at 15 years old, if you ask me what 25, now a 25-year-old is an old person to me at 15. You know what I mean?
Right. 100%.
And so at 25, I'm like, well, shoot, I've got to be a multi-millionaire traveling the world doing all kinds of stuff. And once you get into it, like as you actually grow up, you start to realize that things take time. Like things, it's crazy because it's not like it just takes time, but it takes consistent effort. So what you thought was going to take 10 years to get this ginormous thing, it actually most likely, in the reality of things, will most likely take longer. But the same amount of work is going to need to be put in that 10, and then the next 10, and then the next 10. And so that's kind of how I've been framing this question in my mind. But for you guys, I think there was a couple important points, but one thing that I was also thinking about when it came to this subject is how, when we're talking about full potential, right? A man reaching his full potential, what does that look like? Like, what does that actually look like to be continuously pursuing, going after, and achieving your full potential? Because I think it works in stages. Like at 15, I was doing the best that I could possibly do at 15. I guarantee. Like I had my head down, I was getting to it at 15. But I was thinking like a 15-year-old. So I could not do what a 25-year-old Martell was going to do. We didn't have the same intentions. So for you, what would you say, what would be your answer to that?
Man, you hit the point, right? I sit back, you have to not be satisfied where you are, at least for me, okay? And every time I became satisfied with where I was, that word complacency came in, and so the point was, I had to change. I had to evolve if I was going to do more or achieve more. And so that's kind of the way I look at it. When you kind of laid that out, when I was in college, my mindset was very narrow. I wasn't exposed to a lot. And to go to the question whether I reach my full potential, that's a self-check where I never really felt like I reached my full potential because I always felt like I have more I can do. Now, did I achieve a few things here and there? Yeah, I did. Did I make some mistakes? Yeah, I did. But I feel like if you continue to learn, and I did, I learned from my mistakes, I learned from some successes, and try to keep growing and building on that. It's kind of like the man with the talents again. If you grow your talents, if you got the same things you had 10, 15, 20 years ago today, and you haven't really done anything more, you haven't achieved anything more, that to me, that's a problem. So I should have been able to maybe impact the world more. I should be able to influence things more. I should be able to look back and say, you know what, a few things got accomplished.
Got you. One thing that I want to throw into this conversation, I heard a quote, Myron Golden. He was given a talk at, I believe it was this, your first funnel challenge. And he said something along the lines of, everybody is doing the best that they can where they are, because who they are hasn't evolved to where they want to be. So it's like, when I think about, and you can only do this in hindsight, really. Like, well, the only way that I've been able to do it is in hindsight. Because when I think about, again, going back to the 15-year-old Martell, I would be thinking like, well, shoot, maybe I could do more. Maybe I could do this, that, and the other, and maybe it'll map out to this thing or whatever. But in reality, with the habits that I had, with the thought process that I had, with the knowledge that I had, with the exposure that I had, with the people I was around, I was doing all that I could do. Like, there was no, if I did this, then this other thing would happen. It was like, no. My best foot was being put forward every single day with the information that I had. And so I can't look back at my 15-year-old self and said, you should have been doing this, this, and this instead. How could I have known any better?
And the key is that's exactly where you were supposed to be. And that's the part where I think we often get misaligned, because ultimately we're on earth to get closer to God, to do God's work, to take care of each other. And I think our goals get misaligned and put out of whack a lot of times. And for me personally, like, I call that scoreboard watching. It's easy to run your race and you start looking over in the next lane. Well, what are they doing? Where are they going? Something I saw that I thought was pretty cool the other day was Sha'Carri Richardson, right? I remember a couple years ago, she just came out of nowhere. She blew up. She was like to the moon, but she was young. She was very young, and a lot of notoriety and popularity had been given to her, a lot of fame, and she was good. She had a lot of potential, but she wasn't ready for that platform. And so she went like this on the big stage. She couldn't cut it. Everybody kind of forgot about her. Like, literally, we stopped talking about it. She had like advertisements, all types of stuff. And then nobody really heard about her unless you were just really enveloped in the track world. Mm-hmm. Fast forward a few years later, she ends up winning a world championship. She beats the Jamaican women, which I don't think anybody really thought she was going to do. And what was interesting about the whole story was when they interviewed her and they asked her, like, how do you feel? People are going to say this, people are going to, and she said, and I'm paraphrasing also, but it's like, I don't care what people say at this point. Like, people, they've loved me, they've been my friend, people have thrown me away, they forgot about me, but I never gave up on myself. You know what I'm saying? And for me, what I heard is I never gave up on God, because how you believe in yourself, like, not what you tell people, not what you try to think, but what you truly believe, I feel like is what you truly get out of life. And you can look at somebody's actions, and over time, if you give it long enough, you can see how they feel about themselves. And sometimes immediately, because if you're not confident in yourself, you're not going to be confident in anyone else. If you don't believe in God, you can't be confident in yourself. So it's really like a product of small things that equal into this large thing that comes off to the world as self-belief or self-confidence.
Yeah. So, I'm heard Mike, and I'm sitting there, I'm listening to what Martell said, listening to what you said, Mike. And, Martell, you said a couple of things that, your 15-year-old self. And Mike, where you went with the track star, I look back, and I guess maybe I'm wired a little different. I always look back and see where I should have did things some differently. You know what I mean? I do. I don't think I ever really did things to my highest potential. You follow me? Now, did I give it my all? In a lot of cases, yeah. But I don't think I reached the potential, okay? I use wrestling as an example. I wrestled in high school. I had talent. I did all right. I had a little, mild success, but I didn't put the energy I needed to put into it. I wound up stopped wrestling and working my last year in high school, But the point I'm getting at is that I left some stuff on the table there if I wanted it, you know. And I look at in my 20s, I went to grad school early. If I would have maybe looked and wanted to change my career at that time, I probably could have did it and did a lot more. I guess I look back, not that I regret anything. It's just that I feel like I could have did things better. I could have had a relationship with God sooner, and I would have. You know what I mean? I guess that's where I reflect. So that motivates me to try to do more now. You know what I mean? I guess that's kind of where I'm going.
And see, that's what I was about to say, but you took the words out of my mouth, Rodney. I really feel you had to go through these phases of truly questioning yourself, like, why am I not giving my all? Because I've done the same thing. I always tell people, well, like when I played football, I ended up being really good, but I loved basketball. I just happened to be a much better football player. And so it came so natural to me. It was a gift and a curse, because it got to the point where I knew enough to beat the person in front of me or the people around me. And as long as I was beating them, in my mind, I was good. Now, my coach used to get irritated because he knew. He said, I know you're not going your all. It doesn't matter if you're beating that guy. He's like, I know you kicking that guy's butt. Because I'm like, what do you mean? I'm doing my job. And he's like, but you're not giving me your all. And what I always tell people is, I learned so many lessons from football, but after I stopped playing.
Mm-hmm.
That's what really opened my eyes. And what I realized is, you know what? I never really loved football to the point where I wanted to just eat, sleep, breathe football 24/7. Like, I know some of my guys, that's literally how they do. And that was never on my spirit. However, I feel like real estate is something like that's my sport in life.
Yeah.
And had I not gone through that experience of me questioning, like, why didn't I give my all? But the point was, I wasn't ready. That wasn't the time. That wasn't the arena. But because I went through that period, now I take that knowledge and experience and I apply it to right now. Like, you know what? Leave it all on the field. Right now, at my age right now, where I'm at, every day, that's a conversation I have with myself.
One thing too, and I appreciate that you brought that up, Rodney, because I don't want anybody to be getting the wrong idea about the beginning of this conversation. There is another side of this. Like this is not just to let everybody off the hook. You're good. This is like because I completely understand what you're talking about. Like at a certain time period, you're thinking, well, shoot, I could be doing this, or I at least knew that this would be a better idea. Like I should have turned in my homework on time and I would have gotten a better grade. I knew that at that point in time, but I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to dig a little bit deeper into that right now, because think about this in these different contexts. There's I knew that I could have studied a little bit more. I could have, did a little bit more executing instead of just talking about it, and I'd be better financially. I could have read a few more scriptures, actually showed up to church, and then got serious about my relationship to God, and then I'd be closer to him. There's I could have actually paid attention to my wife, listened to what she had to say, made the adjustments that I need to make, and I'd still be married. There is that side of this story. And it's like, there's the guy out there who's listening to this episode, and he's in that situation where he's like on the brink of messing up tremendously on one side, or being extremely great in that same area. But it's up to him making the decision to actually do what he knows to do. Now, we talked about this word complacency before. That was the word brought up in the beginning of this episode. Tell me how that creeps into a man's life.
Well, I think you framed it, and I think that this example I gave for myself, hey, that was complacency. Why I didn't do better. But the other part of it, and this kind of goes with what Mike said about football, after he was done, he still learned from that. You know, those times looking back. And I like when I wrestled, I learned so much about myself and how to deal with problems from wrestling. And what I mean by that is this, is that you on the mat, it's just you and that person. You're on a team, but the team can't help you. You know, not when you're in the mat. So you got to deal with stuff head on. So as I got older, how I dealt with conflict, how I dealt with people, a lot of that came from how I wrestled and what I learned about myself, what I gave up, you know, when I didn't give it my all and I didn't fight through the end of the match and I got pinned one time. I never forget, it stuck in my head. Like, you know, and in my mind, I like, you quit. Nobody else knew, but I knew. And I'm like, that can't happen again. So, you know, you learn from that. Now, if you become complacent, you make excuses for it and you allow it to continue in your life versus use it as a motivation to do and get better.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on, Rodney. And I love that wrestling analogy. You can use the same for a boxing analogy where you on a team. You know, everybody's cheering you on, your coaches, your parents, you know, your friends, your family. But end of the day, you're in that arena, in that ring by yourself. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that we got to realize. And that's why it's so important to have a strong spiritual connection with God, man, because, you know, one thing I tell my kids is you can do all things through Christ that strengthens you. Mm-hmm. So when you rely on your own strength, or when we rely on our own strength, we're going to have moments where, you know what, I feel like quitting. I feel like, man, I'm kind of tapped out. But when you put it towards a higher source, a higher power, that's when you can really focus on the assignment or the mission, because it's not about you anymore. You know, it's things like yesterday we went, you know, Rodney and I got up early. We went and volunteered with the kids, and, you know, we welcomed them back. And this particular school is two different sides, where you have the one side is the Montessori kids, and they have a community. They have a more affluent background. They have a more stable life. I mean, it's off the hook. It's pouring with support. On the other side, there's not really hardly any support, you know, or even sometimes it's negative things that you see from the parents. And so something like that, you know, I could have been, you know, with my kids at that time, and we could have been doing something else, getting our day started. But it's like, you know what, this is important because it's a part of our assignment in life. That's what we're here for. It's not for us to just focus on, you know, what we deem as success for us. So like I always tell people, what do you want to do? Like when we were coming up, it was a cartoon called DuckTales. And Scrooge McDuck, he used to dive in his gold. He used to just have a good time, just literally swimming in his gold. Cool, and this might be before your time. But he used to dive. And I said, man, what you want to do? Just dive in your gold? Like, is that the idea of fun? Because, you know, you got to be careful with what we deem as success, you know. And I know it's a part of it where we have to have the monetary success, because we need that to be able to impact others. But at the same time, it's a lot of people that do have those things and they feel terrible internally. They have no purpose. They have no mission. We see it all the time. You see these superstars, millionaires committing suicide and depressed. So everything is about having that balance, you know, that foundation. And ideally it's taught from a very early age when you're a kid. But if you didn't have that, we can't rewind. You got to start where you're at, you know. Like we always say in real estate, the best time to buy real estate was 20 years ago. The next best time is right now. You got to just start where you're at and just start doing the work. Start swinging that axe, and eventually the tree's gonna fall.
Yeah.
On that success point, I think too, it's really interesting because, like, you know, you might find a dude who's out there who might be sold out for God, showing up to church, leading his family, reading the Bible, studying the word, all this other stuff, and he might be killing it in that area. But one thing that I know we've got a few people out there listening who can relate to this is, but they might have this beer belly. Or they might be killing it when it comes to their finances. They are earning like crazy. They can afford anything that the wife wants. The house is taken care of. The kids taken care of. But they work so much that they don't spend any time with their kids and they don't pay attention to their wife.
So Martell,
Like-
you talking about my belly, Martell?
Come on, man. Look, we know. Hey, for those who don't know, I know we ain't all standing up. Rodney ain't got no beer belly. Don't let him mislead you. But no, I'm saying like because it's so interesting because we might be focused solely on one area or one aspect of our life, but then we miss out on the other parts. Mike, you talked about balance. For me, I think it's important. I think the way that complacency creeps in is being too focused on one particular area and then neglecting the rest. Or you might have 3 of them taken care of. Your finances is good, your relationship is good, and your faith is good, but you don't exercise and you eat trash. You're going to die early. That's reality.
No, it's real. No, you're right. And I think that place it hits that way where, in like those areas, like you said, Martell, but it also creates stagnation too. You know, some people are scared to succeed. It's easier to stay where they're at. And that's one thing that, look, this self-reflection. At a job, been there for 30 years, and I look at people and I look at where I was, like, hey, retired, I could do something else, but this is a safe place to be. And I'm like, that's the wrong mindset. It's like, it's and you guys helped me with that mindset change too as well. I mean, watching Mike, talking to Mike, Martell, listening to you, talking to you, it's like, no, it's more out there. There's more I can do. There's more I will do. But the point though is that if I'm complacent, you don't grow in complacency. And there's no satisfaction in it.
That's an important part, Rodney. And we like to say there's power in proximity. Mm-hmm. So where you put yourself and the people that are in your circle, that to a large part is going to impact your daily mindset, because I know exactly what you're saying. Like, for those of y'all that don't know, Rodney and I, we in our former life, we worked in the same corporate company, but in different capacities. So when he says like, there's people that think like a certain way, I definitely understand what he's saying, because that was a part of my biggest challenge, just being in the corporate world, period, where I knew I was like a fish out of water. I'm like, man, I'm not like a lot of these people, man, because it's almost like an assembly line mentality. Like, all right, we'll put the 1, 2, 3, 4, the 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm like, well, what about 5? Or why don't worry about 5. We're doing 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, why are we doing that? Because we've always done it like that. And I was like, man, it's almost like people would get offended when I would have these out of the box questions. And I've had everything. I had people tell me like, you're too optimistic, like literally. And I'm like, what? And I was really questioning, like, man, am I too much? Do I dream too big? But what I realized, I was like, you know what? This is not the spot for me.
Yeah.
But going back to that word complacency, I was making a nice salary, right? And so the more worldly success that we attain, I think the easier it is to get complacent, because instead of us taking those risks and trying new things, we're like, well, we know we have this right here. I'm good. I'm nervous about, I don't know what's over there. But the question you got to ask yourself is, how do you know what you have is better than what's to come? How do you know that? You don't know that. And that's the whole thing that goes back to faith aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think when you talk about, so my definition of complacency, I think when you describe it, it's pretty much being too comfortable at where you are that you neglect your future, where you could be.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, you know what? I've got the nice job, right? And you see that. I mean, I think this is essentially a large part of the middle class. It's like, and this is also the dangerous point this is a really dangerous point to be at when it comes to faith too. It's like, I've got everything taken care of financially. I've got a place that I like to live in. I got a vehicle that I like to drive. I got a situation that is comfortable enough to where I don't need to do anything differently. So why would I pray to this God you talk about? I don't need him. Everything is fine with me. I just show up to work. So and everything else is taken care of. I mean, I'm good in this relationship. She is good enough for me not to be worried about X, Y, and Z and things. We don't have enough issues for me to actually try to make anything better in this situation. And so that essentially is complacency. What is the dangerous part about that is pretty much what you was just saying. You don't know what there could be, and you've pretty much decided that where you are cannot be better. Like, I'm fine with this, and I'm not willing to do the work to make anything better. There's a word, Proverbs 13:4. The soul of the sluggard desireth and hath not, but the soul of the diligent shall be made fat. I think a person who is complacent, they might be thinking about what life could be, but they are unwilling to put in the work. That's what we call lazy. And it's like, and you don't have to just be lazy. Well, I'm not lazy because I show up to work every single day. You can be, like I said before, you can be working really hard at showing up to work. You could be working really hard at getting things done, but you can be really lazy mentally. You could be really lazy in your health. You could be really lazy in your faith. You can be really lazy in all these different areas. So when you don't have that balance, then one of the things automatically gets neglected.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting is I heard once that the way they describe hell was when your time on this earth is complete and you see all the things and all the dreams that you could have accomplished if you would have just applied yourself. And you have to live with that just for eternity. And I just thought that was interesting because I'm like, man, that's, you know, it just really got my gears thinking. And like I know Inky Johnson, he always has this phrase about emptying the bucket. Like leave no liquid in that bucket. Like everything in there, just leave it out there, just pour it all out, get every drop of life. And I think that at the point where I'm at now in life, I fully understand what he's saying. I fully embrace that because I know I'm not just impacting myself, I'm impacting my family, impacting my kids, but I'm also impacting other people. My light and my fire that you feel when I'm in the room, it invites other people to light their own fires. And we start moving as a unit, and that's when major things happen. Oh, one other thing too, I want to say, a lot of this goes back to self-belief though. And that's one thing that I think we mentioned it earlier, but I really want to, drive that point home is I firmly believe that you get in life what you believe, not what you say you want, not what you think you want, but what you truly believe you deserve. So if you're having trouble, goal setting, you're having trouble just embracing where you're at and creating like a battle strategy for where you want to be, I really want to invite you to get around individuals that are doing some of the things that you want to do. For us, we have something called Men 2.0, and it's where every second week of the month, we come together as men, like high caliber men. We come in with a lot of energy, a lot of great ideas. Sometimes we just talk about what's going on in a particular brother's life, but we're feeding each other. We're talking about goals, aspiration, and it's all based on biblical principles. So if you haven't found anything like that, I really invite you to examine your immediate circle. Who are the people you're spending the most time with? And if you feel that you want to be somewhere else, Start putting yourself in these environments. Even if you don't think you're ready yet, put yourself physically, mentally there. You will catch up if you truly believe that's where you're meant to be.
True love.
So putting a bow on this conversation, how would you say that you can truly live a balanced life and reach your full potential?
Man, the way I would answer that question is you got to keep striving and keep dreaming. Okay, keep trying to attain your dream. If you don't have a dream, then I got to say you got to ask yourself, are you being complacent? Because I think everybody wants to do more. And it goes back to what Mike said, Martell, I think you alluded to, is your faith. I mean, God didn't put us here to just sit in one spot and do nothing. It's like the man with the talents. The one who had one did nothing, settled. The God took away from him and gave it to somebody else.
Yeah.
He said, get away from me, you wicked servant. So it's like, if you ain't trying to grow what you got, I don't care what age you are, then you sitting on your talents.
Yeah, definitely.
And I would just add, everything goes back to process with me, and not just process, but the daily process. Every day, I try to win the day. I focus on today. I let tomorrow, it's going to deal with itself. We'll deal with it when we get there. But let's get through today. Let's focus. Let's create a plan. Everything starts with a plan, and then you have to work the plan.
Yeah. And me, if I had to put my 2 cents on like living a non-complacent, making my life a complacency-free zone, all I do every day, just like what Mike was saying, it's the daily process. So the way that I ensure that I'm not lacking in any particular area is that when I schedule out my day, we were talking about productivity before, I make sure that I hit something in each one of those categories. When it comes to my faith, some people make checklists. If that works for you, then cool, do that. But I do a checklist and I make my schedule. So I always make sure that there's something in the faith category, there's something in the finance category, there's something in the future category, there's something in the physical health category, and I'm getting all of those knocked out every single day. There's a top priority for each one of those areas for me. So I don't look back after a year and think, well, shoot, I did really great in this, but this sucks. Because that you do not want to happen. And so that's just my strategy for going about it. Definitely the daily process. If you didn't hear it when Mike said it, Men 2.0, press the card up on the screen. And if you like this, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the channel, share it with somebody else. And with that being said, we gonna see y'all next week.
Peace.